On to the next. We really wanted to talk about Israel, Palestine.
Yes, let's do it.
But I just want to preface this by saying we may get canceled. I don't know. But we wanted to take like a very like our lens on it. So we're going to talk more about
a therapeutic,
like two topics kind of that circle us more than when we talk about like specifically how we feel about the overall kind of thing.
Yeah. And I think we had talked about this previously. Like, it's everybody knows what's kind of going on. It's in the news everywhere. And so it feels maybe a little bit like irresponsible to just not talk about it at all. It's kind of why we decided to just bring up a topic about it.
I feel like too like you should share your bias because you have a lot of bias.
Yeah, I'm Jewish.
And that's not where your bias comes from.
Oh, no. And I'm super anti-Zionist.
Yes.
And very like pro-Palestine and pro-liberation for Palestine. And I also want like safety for Jewish people, and I want Jewish people to feel also liberated and safe and things like that. But right now, it's a no-brainer for me.
I also just want
to... It's not equity right now.
Right. Yeah.
And I also just want to speak to what you've shared a lot with me, which is that like your experience as a Jewish person is that you don't get clocked or treated like a Jewish person.
Yeah.
And so not that that's something you're salty about. I don't know if it is or isn't, but
no.
I think like
it's just a difference.
It changes your experience because you're like a closeted Jewish person.
Yes.
Unintentionally. Like your family's very Jewish and practice and all of these things, but because you don't have a white body, everyone's surprised.
Right. No, I appreciate it. We talk about this a lot, like Jave and I, and she's somebody who I feel like safe talking about like all the different nuances and stuff about it with. And I think as a Black person and as somebody who's Jewish, you know, I've done, my whole Jewish family is white. It's my brother and I are the only people of color in like our Jewish side of the family.
And you went on a birthright?
I went on a birthright trip, and when I was early in college and got chewed out by a lot of my Muslim and Arab friends, and rightfully so, I deserved it. And it changed a lot for me. You know, I kind of was like, I'm going on this free trip. And
who wouldn't feel like that at fucking 22?
Right.
How old are you?
And they weren't like, they were empathetic and they got it, but they schooled me. They educated me. And I went on this trip and they were right. You know, it was a ton of propaganda. It was a ton of racism that I encountered, right? There was maybe one or two people on the trip who were either queer or just kind of like cooler, actually. Not even like a...
Were you the only brown person?
The only brown person on the whole trip.
What is I know what a birthright trip is, but I also don't. You know, like how does it work? Yeah.
So a birthright trip is essentially a trip that it's a free trip for anybody from like the Israeli... It's from the Jewish diaspora, I guess.
Diaspora, yeah.
They really want... Specifically, it's really for Jewish people. They want them to like repatriate to Israel and to become like you have to be... They have IDF soldiers on the trip with you to kind of educate you. If you want to move and be in Israel, you have to. It is mandatory that you serve in the IDF, and so they also
2 years for women, 3 years for men.
Yeah,
exactly.
So I'm a Jew lover, and I didn't know that was actually so. Like the state pays for it.
No. Oh yes.
The birthright trip.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. They pay for your ticket. They pay for everything
because they're going to do propaganda.
Yeah, and so they take you to the Gaza Strip and you overlook it and you see all these things and the whole.
Did you get to go in there?
Yeah, you don't go in you don't get to go in the Gaza Strip, but you look, you're there.
They take. Do you get to walk on the streets that only Jews get to walk on in the Gaza Strip, or do you only get to look at?
Nobody gets to go in Gaza.
Okay.
You never get to go to Gaza unless you're like working with a Palestinian Jewish like coalition. You can go to Gaza.
Okay.
My cousin was actually going to do that. And, you can't go to the Muslim quarter when you're on a birthright trip. You can't go to the, kind of the cultural interesting shit. You can't go be around other brown people. And when you go to Israel, it feels segregated, right? People don't want to talk about that. But it feels, Black people and brown people and Black Jews and Ethiopian Jews are a large population. They don't have the same rights. Like it's literally in the Constitution. Right? People they want a certain type of Jewish people in Israel. And so the idea that it's for all Jewish people, is a fallacy. The idea that it creates safety for Jewish people is a fallacy. So I'm getting kind of off topic. But long story short, I think, I feel Black before I feel Jewish. That's the thing that people notice about me most. That's the thing that I identify with most. And I think that white Jewish folks, including some folks in my family, struggle with that piece. I think that I or others are choosing other parts of our identity over being Jewish because, frankly, for a lot of white Jewish people, that's kind of the only source of marginalization they have in their lives. It's the thing that connects them to being a marginalized population. And I think that matters to them. And there's not a lot of kind of context surrounding that.
So
you can always use your body to.
We had two different things that we wanted to talk about. And I actually want to talk about the second one first.
Turning away.
So there's a lot of conversation online about like disengaging from what's going on in Israel and Palestine because it's better for your mental health.
Mm-hmm.
Not yet.
Not yet. Yeah. It's better for your mental health. It's like, better for you to
protect your peace.
Protect your peace. Yeah. Don't get overwhelmed by watching what's going on. Like, don't watch all these videos. They're harmful for you. Like, and only engage when it feels good to you. Mm-hmm. And I really wanted to talk about that because I think from a therapeutic perspective, it's so interesting.
It's really.
Because what I would tell somebody as a therapist is not what I would tell my friend to do. They're totally different things.
Yes.
Like, I would tell my friend, you need to be checked in and watching this.
Yes.
And that the least you could do is witness this
and not turn away.
So that when media tells you that it wasn't real, you can be a witness and say it was real. Like, that's the least you can do.
You need to be on the right side of history.
As a therapist, I literally tell my clients to get off of social media. Yes. That is what I'm telling them to do. So it's so interesting because
I literally have clients who are Black or who are across the spectrum, literally distraught. And they're literally, I'm sure you have the same experience. People are like, what do I do with this? I don't know what to do. Kind of like, I don't know how this
Nobody's
is
brought up
me.
Israel, Palestine to me.
I guess you're working with kids too, so that's different.
I'm working with people who are in crisis.
Yes.
So they don't care.
They have other fish to fry right now. As Rachel Fax, as a Black woman, society's my Blacks first before they see as a woman. We just saw a Black pregnant woman get killed by the police. Yeah, completely.
I'm like the least popular guy on this podcast.
How does it feel? No, I'm joking. I think, with my clients, I'm saying, do what you need to do to take care of yourself. If you need to log off, do that. If you need to go talk to friends, do that. Like, dial into your own humanity. Like, take space. If you specifically for my brown and Black clients, I'm saying, take space. And that is different than what I'm saying to my white clients, right?
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
So why are you telling your Black and brown clients to take space?
My Black and brown clients, I'm telling them if it feels good for them, they should take space, right? And that I can understand that feeling solidarity and that feeling community is also self-care. Being tuned in and being informed is also self-care, right? Knowing what's going on around you. I think the thing that I tell them is you don't have to be all the time. You don't have to be tuned in, and it can be overwhelming, right? Tune in for 3 hours a day. Right? Have limits for like your doom scrolling. Like, you don't need to be consistently like looking at reels of kids getting their faces blown off. Like,
that's not to you because it's not good for their mental health.
Right. Exactly. But if I were talking to you, we might watch a documentary about like that shit, or we might like send each other stuff on Instagram, and like I'm not thinking about it necessarily.
But why aren't you telling your white clients that they can check out?
It's not that I'm telling them they can't check out. I'm using it as an opportunity.
Don't smack the table.
Oh, yeah. I'm using it as an opportunity to talk about, to be honest, most of my white clients I have are they're open to having this conversation, and they're kind of asking me like, what can I do as a white person?
Do they know you're Jewish?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I talk about that. And, I tell them, there's a lot going, essentially, I say it better, but, there's a lot going on in the world right now. You should definitely take care of yourself. And a way to show up as a white person right now is to do the hard thing, which would be to post things that aren't maybe what your family wants you to post or your friend group wants you to post, or donating money is a huge one. Like, giving funds is like what white people should be, anybody, but white people specifically should be doing. Having hard conversations with family and friends, those type of things. Like, yeah, I want them to take care of themselves. And if they're asking, I'm going to say, this is what people are requiring right now. Like, tune into Palestinian voices, tune into what people are saying there.
So for you personally, you're not giving white people different feedback because they're white. It's because they're asking different questions.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
Huh?
That's what she just said?
Yeah.
I took that totally differently.
I didn't say
because she had said, well, sorry, I'm probably reading between the lines because I know her, but
Yeah.
basically what she was saying is that like her black clients are asking her if it's okay to check out, and she's saying yes, and then her white clients are asking, what should I do as a white person?
Yes.
Okay.
So she said like she's giving different advice based on the questions being asked.
And it's
Understood.
still with care of like, you know, if I have white who are really impacted by this, right, or who have loved ones that are really impacted by this, and so I have empathy for that too. It's not that I want them to like dive headfirst in and just ruin their fucking mental health, like no, but you know, a lot of them are seeking Canopy out or me out to want to do like anti-racist work or to kind of like talk about the whiteness or talk about those things, and so I think that's what I'm telling them is kind of balance your own needs, and not everybody gets to balance their own needs. And so part of that is kind of maybe not sacrificing that, but engaging in a way than you normally
Say it with
would.
your chest, sacrificing.
Sacrifice it a little bit.
Have you expressed that to like
uncomfortable.
your
Family?
temple, synagogue, whatever?
I don't.
Sorry.
I actually don't belong or go to
Okay.
temple or synagogue, but I do have a group of Jewish. I have recently actually been going to more Shabbat, like Friday night dinners with a couple Jewish friends who are like-minded, kind of anti-Zionist, more like Reform Jews who don't.
Can you
practice
speak to what a
religiously.
Zionist is?
It seems like that's
yeah.
a rising tide too of like, you know, Jews who are starting to express that for the first time.
It's
which
actually
is
really
good, I
awesome.
think,
Actually,
yeah.
it's like it, and a lot of people feel similarly. It's like the first time in history, kind of.
Yeah.
There's been like a massive tide that like is kind of
Only took 10,000.
like rational.
only took 10,000, and literally it's the opposite. It's the first time it's been the opposite of the U.S. government, actually, which is really interesting. We'll see if it actually makes a difference. So far, it hasn't. So.
Agree to disagree. I think there's a lot of discourse online now about.
Yeah, I mean,
people
like
holding
with policy,
representatives. Oh.
with
Yeah.
like the president, like the White House does not give a fuck. They literally were like, we're not doing a ceasefire.
I think that from my personal perspective,
And I forgot to answer your question. Sorry.
we'll go back to it, but America is not in the space to tell Israel not to respond the way they're responding because of how we behaved after 9/11.
And we can't. We're like this with Israel.
We don't have to be like this. We could be willing
could.
to engage with Arab countries in that area, but we don't want to.
We would never.
So, but I'm just
Yeah.
Also, like military wise, like Israel is responding how we would be responding if that happened to us, like
Yes.
in every way possible. That is exactly.
And also Bibi's on tape saying that the Americans are going to react the way they're going to react, and even if they're mad, that they're
That's what
still tight
gonna
with
happen.
us because
Exactly.
we need them for strategy.
Exactly.
Over there.
And
we
they
don't.
know it.
We don't, but we think we do. I
Well,
don't
no,
think we do.
hold on.
Israel-
we do
Israel-
because we made enemies. We've made so many enemies over the years that now we do.
We actually have to have Israel in the Middle East, technically, because of all the fucked up shit that
'Cause
America's done to
of
all
what
the other.
we've done, right.
Yeah, which isn't really true, right? We could,
But it's not
make
true
repair,
because we could fall in line, but we won't.
but we won't, right?
We could just fall in line.
And what people don't realize is there is oil in Palestine.
Financial interest,
There's
right?
fucking oil all along the fucking coast. Like,
Yeah.
they're demolishing it, and then it's sick. What's happening? Sorry,
It's okay.
I get.
It's really funny because like I don't know. I like the way that like what is it called when you like politic based on your demographics? Like you politic based on what you are.
Your self-interest?
No, something politic.
Gabe, you got to know this term.
It's not
Don't,
it's not
or I can't
demograph.
think of it.
Identity.
I'm close.
Identity politics.
Identity politics. Okay.
We're identity politicking, and you're a Jew, so you
Yeah.
know. But like,
Well,
it's
she's not. She's going against it, right?
But what's crazy is
identity
it's not against
politicking.
it.
No, identity politics is like based on your identity, you can do no wrong in that group.
Which is
okay.
what most
So because
Jews are
she's
doing.
Jewish
I
and
thought
she's
it's
being
falling in line with you. Okay,
anti-Israel,
got you.
anti-whatever, it's falling into the culture, right? Because
Right.
the criticism of people who are not that ethnicity, religion, whatever, who are talking about it is you don't know what you're talking about because you don't have lived experience, and she
yeah.
very well does. So she can lean into that as much as she wants to.
I have actually had a family member tell me that I should be ashamed as a Jewish woman. Right, they were like, you should be ashamed and you should be doing more as a Jewish woman. And I said, you don't get to tell me how to act as a Jewish woman. This is what I feel like my Judaism says I should be doing. And it's interesting because one of the pillars of being Jewish is actually self-critique. It's in the Torah. It talks about how Jewish people are supposed to critique religion, critique culture, critique God, critique themselves in the name of like self, like that's above anything else. And so it's interesting that doesn't get like
being a neurotic
uplifted.
Jew is in the Torah?
No, that's
I was
no.
literally just thinking that.
but that's what they
being
say.
neurotic is in the Torah.
Yes.
Like you're supposed to hate yourself.
But that was the joke. That was the meme. It was like they were making fun of because that is literally why people make fun of Jewish people because they're fucking like neurotic and anxious and all that stuff because it's literally like a product of like sentiment in the Torah. That's how they tell you to be. They tell you to be constantly like self-critical.
Back to the like,
Yeah.
how are we as humans
Yeah.
giving our clients different advice than we were giving our friends? Like, how come we can say to our clients, like, take care of yourself first, but we're telling everybody else in our community that they should put this first and they should sacrifice their own well-being to engage in this online? Because that is kind of what I'm telling people. Like, I don't really feel bad for you. Why? Like, how do we even hold that?
I don't know. I actually don't know. I don't know why it's different. I haven't thought about it to be honest, that deeply. I think it's just like what I go to. Like in session, I go to, my role is to support my client. My role is to challenge my client maybe, but it's not my job to like impose upon them. But I am having like real conversations. I've had clients who, they know how I'm like, they know where I land on this stuff actually. And I actually feel okay about that. I don't know why it's different. Maybe because we have personal relationships and so I can ask more of my friends than I can ask of my clients.
I think it's different for me because I get to have self-interest in personal relationships. Like I get to say, like, be informed because I want you to know. And I don't get to do that in the same way in therapeutic relationships.
There's not the same requirement.
Also, the work I'm doing is crisis work, so we're not talking about this at all. Everybody I work with could give a shit about this because their kid's trying to kill themselves.
Which makes sense. Aren't you doing it based on their strength? And can you explain that more?
Like, so this whole time you've been saying this, I've been 100% under the assumption you guys both had the same, that the reason you expect that from a friend is because they are strong, they're in a better place mentally maybe in their life, and that your clients are more likely to be in a
That's
less
really
stable.
interesting. No,
That's what I thought it was.
Maybe for
most of my friends are Black and brown, and so I think it changes the conversation because I think the conversation is around solidarity and holding witness, right? So it's like, well, this is your responsibility to show up for Black and brown people. It's
It feels
your
necessary.
responsibility to figure out what's going out there. And I can call on, I think, other Black and brown people to do that in a way that I don't ask other people to do it. I really don't.
Yes.
But the Black and brown friends I have, we bond over identity. We bond over our experience in the world. And so, like,
it's community. What we're seeing happen in Palestine is literally what we've experienced as Black people, what people who are indigenous have experienced. It's genocide. It's being wiped out. And so it feels personal too, I think. Like if people,
let's talk about why you think it's genocide. Why do you think it's genocide?
Because it's genocide.
I know, but I want to hear people talk. I want to hear her
Why?
say it. Because people are going to
That's
go
a great
nuts
question.
online.
Yeah. I think it's genocide because it is actively, if you look at the rhetoric that
Glad you're on the same page, Gabe.
No, thank God.
I'm
Even
surprised
though
you think I'd think something else.
even
But
though
anyway.
I don't think you would think something else at all. I think this has been...
It's surprising how people come out about it.
You know what? I'm going to have a very vulnerable share and say that for the first time in a long time, I know how white people feel. Because Jewish people are saying to me that I'm being anti-Semitic when I don't think I am.
Mm-hmm.
You're not.
And I'm sure Black people or white people are being told they're racist when they don't think they are.
You're right.
And
It's
for
exactly the same.
Yep. And for the first time in my life, I'm feeling under the microscope, like every single word I could say could have my character questioned and I could be canceled. And I know how that feels. And now I know how it feels. And I'm like, fuck that. Don't sum me up in this tweet. And it's like that similar kind of experience, if I'm being totally honest.
Can I do a
Yeah.
quick share based on that?
Yeah.
So when you
first of all,
guys
do you
say
think,
this
you think
about,
it's right?
do I? Yeah, no,
Okay.
I think you're 100%. I've agreed. Yes, and so I had a big fight over this because I view it the same way. Like, yes, what Hamas did. Ugh, why am I saying it so weird? Hamas did. Yeah, when they came, I'm Lebanese too. Like, as whatever,
Yeah, you
which
told me
they're
that.
based. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is of course monstrous. I'm not saying like that attack was monstrous. I'm not saying anything else. I'm
It's
just
not
saying
about
the
it being
fact that
monstrous. Everyone who's acting like it's unprovoked is what's really killing me.
right, exactly, and it's like of course it is. Like they're enslaved. They're living under apartheid fucking conditions. Like what would you do? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So now I wouldn't go
off,
kill
Gabe.
innocent people,
Go
but
off.
anyway, right? But it's like of course.
But you know
It's
what's
like, what the
crazy
fuck
about
are you
that?
thinking?
But I don't dehumanize them for doing it, and that's where I feel differently. I'm not saying Hamas specifically, but I think there's this large faction of the country that feels like well, Palestinians put them in power, and so fuck Palestine too.
Yeah,
and I have
no.
a
Which
lot
also
of,
They don't
isn't
have a
true.
choice either.
and I feel a lot of empathy for any Palestinian who was rooting for a group that was like, fuck Israel, kill Israel. I had a
Right.
lot of empathy for them.
Right.
I'm not saying that like it's right, but I'm saying like I have a shit ton of empathy for anybody.
Because we know how it feels to have not be championed. You know what it feels like to have no group champion you. And all of a sudden when your people start championing you and speaking up and reacting against an oppressor, we know how that feels. And it doesn't mean it's right to go and kill innocent. I hate that I even have to fucking like qualify
Exactly.
it. And I actually read something that was like, why do black people, and black people specifically, have to qualify when they're going to say something like hard? Like, why do we all have to say we know Hamas is wrong? Why do we all have to say that we like?
So
It's exactly the same
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
Israel, genocide, like the definition is the deliberate killing of a large number of people from a particular nation or ethnic group with the aim of destroying the nation or the group. And that's why a lot of people are like, well, what's happening in Israel is like self-defense, and that's not what it's about, and all of these things. And
There's a plan. They have rhetoric. They have. Sorry, I'm so
Go ahead. No, you can go.
There is actually I actually looked this up earlier. I was like going down. I should send it to both of you. Actually, it's they use specific language and like propaganda.
Is it the book on how to talk about Israel?
Yes. Did you
Okay.
see that?
I did see it.
And
Why don't you share what we're talking about?
it's a.
I can pull it up if you got, if you can direct me to it at all. Otherwise,
go ahead,
I've
keep
seen
talking.
clips. There's
yeah.
a documentary where it talks about the Israelis who fought the war in the late 40s.
Yeah.
Oh God, the
and
Nakba?
and
The
they
Nakba?
did and they did interviews with those soldiers like recently. It is one of the most horrifying pieces of
There's actually a Instagram page called Soldier Something for Peace, and it's ex-IDF soldiers talking about the horrors of the things they had to do. And
Yes,
kind of
that's it.
Yes, yeah,
That's it.
Yeah,
I watched that too.
And
Yeah.
and please, for everyone out there, I am a Jew lover, dyed in the wool, for real, But
the thing
it's
that
Also, Israel is not making Jewish people more safe. That's also
Right.
the downside of all of this that's going on is the amount, and that's not right. It's totally not right. But they are giving such an excuse to the level of anti-Semitism.
this
going
does not make Jewish people safer. It absolutely does not make Jewish people safer.
just go on Reddit and watch one video of like a shell-shocked Palestinian
Yeah.
kid, like a 7-year-old boy who's shaking
I know.
Yeah.
because they're asking for their sister who died, and it's like, how the fuck can any adult look at that and
And
not
Well,
just
Israel's
say that
literally
is
putting
fucked?
things-
But Israel, there are people
Sorry.
in Israel.
No, you're good. I'm
They are
cutting you off.
living.
Sorry.
They are living normally. They're going to clubs. They're going to parties. And as they
They've
should.
only lost 300 people since this happened, by the way. They've only lost 300 soldiers
And I
since
think
the
that-
initial death toll. Since the initial death, like the 1,400 with the thing, they've only lost 300 people. Since that day happened, so they lost 1,400 people on October 7th. And then since that day happened, they lost like 340-something soldiers.
Yep.
And 10,000 Palestinians have died.
If not,
And I don't think that's even a worthwhile part of the conversation, though. It's just a matter of
I think it is because
That
I think
is-
there's retaliation that happened. And what's the number? Like there's part of me that
and it's not
people
even.
are
It's not
acting
even.
like-
This isn't even. It isn't an even. This isn't like Israel. It's like the Israel-Hamas war. There's no chance.
it's never been even, right?
It's never been even.
and that's
And-
why to me it doesn't matter. Like,
No.
of course, it's
and
a
I
slaughter.
and I hear a lot of Jewish people talking about this like it's an isolated incident. Like
It's
they
really
attacked
sick.
us, and that is actually the
came
sick.
out of nowhere.
No, that's the sick part. You're completely right. I get so up in arms about this. I'm like, for almost 100 years, people have been displaced, and it's been uneven. And so when people, I hear white people saying, well, the United States has never bombed its own people. No, the United States has never bombed white people.
Oh, we've done a fuckload of awful shit.
Well, we
yeah.
bombed our own people in our own country, right? And so people, we think that
We've done worse
the
than
MOVE
that.
movement, the United States government dropped bombs on the MOVE movement in Detroit, I think that was like black protesters. They killed women and children. And
They've killed white people too, like Kent State and shit.
Right,
And then they
right.
also, but what's worse, we did Gulf of Tonkin incident,
Right.
which killed thousands and thousands of our young people on
Right.
a false flag attack.
fucking, what's it called?
We're
The
monsters.
Black Wall Street, whatever. They bombed.
We bombed
Bombed.
In
Tulsa?
Oklahoma.
Bombed.
We bombed Tulsa?
Bombed.
I didn't know we bombed
I didn't know we
Tulsa.
bombed it. I know they burnt.
Bombed.
But
Well, that
yeah,
was
whatever
I knew it was
case.
bombing.
Yeah, it
I
was
just didn't
awful,
know
whatever
who it was.
That was us.
Yeah.
But I'm saying all that, I don't know. All of the, I just think, I know it's funny because we weren't going to go into our opinions.
I
but we
know.
have to go into our opinions, right? I think.
How do you not in this thing, you know?
It feels necessary.
For me, I think this is the first time in my life I'm just like completely on the outside because I usually speak a lot about American politics and like, so I'm completely on the outside looking in, and I'm talking from this space where people are like, you don't know what you're talking about. And I have to remind myself the same thing I ask of white people when they talk about black issues, which is like, you don't have to be black to talk about black things. You just have to bring knowledge. You have to have insight and knowledge. You do not have to be black.
And be
you
curious.
just have to have insight, knowledge, and be curious. And so I'm trying to hold that in the same way, right? Like I'm reading about what's happening in Palestine. I'm reading about what's happening with Israelis. Like I'm trying to understand from an empathetic standpoint what's going on and be curious. And I think where my bias is coming in is as like, it reminds me a lot of black and brown people in this country where we're like repeatedly oppressed in certain situations. I'm not just talking about now, I'm talking about also the history. And then we do something violent in reaction to it.
And it's like, look, they did
nice.
it. It's gaslighting.
And
that's
how I feel when I'm watching this is like somebody did something violent in retaliation to feeling like less than a human and feeling like, I mean, how many of their parents and all this shit are you going to kill, right? Like,
Yeah.
And then they're not going to act like this.
Maddening.
And so, like, for me, I'm having that parallel experience.
You're an outsider, and I appreciate, like, I get why you're saying that, but I also think, like...
I am, though.
You are, like, you're an outsider for, like, a Jewish Palestine. Like, you're an American, right? We're all American. But, like, there's not, like, a...
But you're a Jew, so you're in there more than me. I think I really am an outsider. Like,
No, wait. But you are an outsider, but, like, with the American aspect, you have, like, you know... Right, you're an outsider on this specific conflict, but you're not an outsider on what is actually going on. You know how to speak on genocide, and you do. And I'm not like this isn't a critique, but like the themes that are coming up, you know about that shit, and like you explain it well. And so,
well, that's what we had wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
One of the things that we wanted to talk about is the ways in which a lot of the minority populations in the world are seeing themselves reflected in Palestine. Sorry, a lot of the ways
Libya,
the minority populations are seeing themselves reflected in Palestine. Also, everybody in the region doesn't like Israel or feels like the U.S. is doing too much, this is an opportunity for them to shit on them. They're putting themselves in a very terrible position. It's not even a strategic position.
Right.
And then also, as a U.S. strategic position, I don't like that we're fighting two wars now.
Yep.
We're on two fronts now.
Yep.
I don't like that.
Well, we're on the edge of World War. Yeah.
Yeah, we're stretched very thin. We're fighting a proxy war with Russia in Ukraine.
Yep.
And we're getting ready, and we're
It's
fighting
a proxy war too. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's Iran.
Yep.
And we're getting ready to enter into a proxy war with China because China's jumping in and saying they're not going either.
Yep.
So are we going to proxy war with our three biggest allies or our three biggest enemies in the world right now? Because we're not going to win.
As Libya and fucking India and Somalia are all descending into civil war, and we all have like a hand in all that stuff too. Like Israel and the fucking Armenians are going through a genocide right now. Like there's that Israel and America have a direct hand in. Like it's
What do you guys think about China and the Uyghurs? Like, there's a genocide there for that too.
I do know for that, and I think
that's monstrous.
It's monstrous, and I feel very different about it as an American because I feel like we have no say or influence. And I mean that wholeheartedly.
Yes, I agree.
really don't think we have any say or influence. I think China is our equal in a lot of ways. And that there's nothing we can really do about it. And,
they're ahead of us.
No, they're not.
Yes, they are.
We'd win that war for sure.
No, we don't.
We don't mean that
they're
we
not
won't.
trained. No, they're not.
Their
practiced.
army, their navy.
I know. No, we have 10 aircraft carriers.
Cyberspace.
We have 2.
Cyberspace, they're taking us out. Not even on some
our power
conspiracy
grid
shit.
is absolutely in jeopardy. But
our power grid's in jeopardy, but more importantly, the level of war we would have to go to defend the Uyghurs feels very different than cutting off aid from
no
Israel.
doubt. No.
So that's
and
why
I'm
I
not
feel
saying
differently.
that.
I was
that's
picking
why
up on the
we've kept
Uyghur
it quiet.
shit a couple years ago, and it is really awful, and it actually plays into what I've been thinking this whole time. And I hate that I'm doing this because I criticize white people for doing this, but there is a piece of me where all the Jewish people bring up anti-Semitism that I'm like, Islamophobia is so heavy. Globally, it's heavy, and I'm not saying
Jewish people are saying that it is not this. It's not at the same level. And
well, okay. So the difference is that Islamophobia is culturally acceptable in the Western world because we look down on Islam
Muslim and
because of
brown
all of
people.
the cultural things that wrap around with women being inferior. I can't even say that in Islam. I can't even say that in Islam women are inferior because I don't know about Islam, but I know in the cultural spaces that
see it
where
as.
Islam practices, there's an overlap where Islam is or like women are inferior. So like in the Western world, that's our way of like discounting Islam as
Yes.
being like, well, women aren't equals, whatever.
As
like
we
you
literally
guys,
lose our rights here.
Well, that feels like equivocating, though. You know what I mean? Like that feels like you're kind of dismissing a real concern.
I'm not
for something
dismissing
that-
a real concern, but what I'm saying is that like I don't think that people have to reflect on their Islamophobia because I think there's a real better than.
Yes.
And I think
And
that
not- and not listening to
anti-Semitism
Muslim
is
people.
being held in a different way because there's not a better than.
Yes.
Like there's not like a thing we can
I'm too
point
stupid
to.
for this
We see.
conversation.
It's not a thing we can point to
Well, we see-
and say like, oh, I can never be Jewish because the way you guys treat women or the way you move in the world or the way you do this. And I
We see
think
Jewish people
can
as
do that
liberal.
with
We see
Islam.
we see Jewish people as being like liberated, as being Western, as
Yeah.
being this, and we see Muslim people like in the West as being from
Behind.
another, as being behind, as being from another
Visitors.
place, as being
Yeah.
visitors. Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's actually, I mean,
No,
you're right.
they
There
started
there
tons of
is like
shit,
some
yeah.
sort of like Venn diagram of it where it intersects, but it's not. We put a lot of our own assumptions on their culture. I think about hijabs, about kind of like being modest, about those things. Like that's our own cultural stuff.
And regardless of whether or not it's better or not, that's for every individual person
Yes.
to decide. But I think it's just more about the cultural context of like, you are not condemned as a morally lesser person if you look down at Islam.
Yes.
And I think you are condemned as a morally lesser person if you look down at Judaism. It's really
Yes.
not about the personal thing. It's
Yeah.
just about the cultural conversation. And so like, I agree that anti-Semitism is on the rise. And I'm curious about like, if
this isn't
Islamophobia
gonna
was
help,
on the
yeah.
rise, will we care?
It is on the rise. Anti-Semitism is on the rise.
No,
but
it is. I'm agreeing.
Nas-
Yeah,
Nationalism
no,
is
I know,
on the
no,
rise.
I'm
I'm
saying,
agreeing.
no, I know
Yeah.
you are, no, I know you are. I'm
Yeah.
saying it. I'm agreeing with you and saying it is, and
Also, though, is anti-Semitism on the rise, or is it like every other thing, like when Trump came out, where now people who are already anti-Semitic feel free to say so?
I think it's both. But
You know what I mean? Like
I do.
that.
I think it's both. But somebody made, I forget who it was. It's not the same. There isn't like a sense. Jewish people are not as safe as Christians, maybe
Yes.
in the United States.
No, they're
right?
not. There's real.
There's
yeah.
real anti-Semitism, but it is not the same as being Muslim and brown in the world, right? Being a white Jewish person and people clocking that you're Jewish, I think, is different than being a Muslim person and being brown at the same time. And maybe wearing a Star of David is different than maybe wearing something on your head or something like that. Like there's different connotations to it, and so I do think the violence is different.
I also believe, and just to like,
Yeah.
it's actually not devil's advocate. I think it's true. I
Yeah.
think that Jewish people assimilate more,
Yes.
and so because there's
completely.
more,
Well, they blend in. Yeah,
for
Yeah.
sure.
So because,
for sure.
but intentionally, like I
Yes.
worked. So when I did my first internship in grad school, we have 1 year internship and a 2nd year internship, and like for both my internships, I picked something that I probably would never do. And so for my first year, I worked with people who had severe and persistent mental illness, and it was like a case management role. And the guy that I was shadowing was Jewish, and he hid it from everybody. I only knew because he had like a Star of David necklace that he wore like way under his clothes that like came out one time, and I asked him about it. He told me, and we started having conversations about it in private. But he was like purposely passing. And we literally had clients who were anti-Semitic, and he was
Yeah.
not saying anything.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that being a white Jewish person from the outside looks like a very specific experience because you get to choose. It's kind of like a white passing person of color. You get to choose whenever you want to out yourself and share, because there is a difference.
You know
and
what-
people do treat all differently. And I know that
Yeah,
because
yeah.
you're a brown Jewish person, you're very critical of white passing, like white Jewish people.
No, nobody would never ever know that I'm Jewish. Except, you know what was crazy? Last week this happened to me. I went to a play with my mom, and we were walking out of the play, and another brown person, literally don't know this person from Adam, right?
Yeah.
Looked at me as I'm walking up the stairs and goes, "Are you Jewish?" I've never had, and I went, "Yeah."
Your mom is so obviously Jewish, though.
So I was
To
like,
be fair.
No. So I think I said that to her. I was like, well, I mean, you were walking with me, so I think that kind of gives it away.
Yeah.
But I've never, And it was another brown person, which I
That
thought was
happens to
interesting.
me all the time, by the way. People
believe
come up
that.
and use like
I believe that.
Yiddish or whatever, like, and they'll speak to me, and I'm like,
believe
Yeah,
no,
I believe
I'm
that.
not Jewish.
You give Jewish.
Yeah, I know.
So that was kind of one of the things that we wanted to talk about, was like this contradiction between like us as therapists telling people like choose your own mental health, but then us as citizens of the world saying engage.
And it can be both.
Fuck your mental health. Engage.
Engage anyway.
Yeah.
I actually tried to comment it, but it didn't come through. But
Yeah.
I'm dying to hear what you guys think, because you know how we were talking about therapy terms that get abused or whatever. To me, once you guys brought this up, I'm like, that's something that gets abused. That whole like protecting myself thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Mrs. X will say, I used to be, I'm a news guy, right? So I'm like, wow, and the newest outrage happens, the Uyghurs, whatever, and I'm sitting there glued to it, like, I can't believe it, and I'm all upset. And I try to tell her about it, or try to like engage, and it was just this like, I just can't even. I just can't even. I can't deal with it kind of thing all the time. And it used to be offensive to me just because it's like, you're a citizen of this fucking world. Like, how you don't get to just, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You don't get to just check out necessarily.
That's how it feels, but
I think
depends though, right? Like, you should be able.
It really does depend.
We're all living our own.
Sometimes
like, if your
I
dad
check
was
out.
dying right now
Yeah.
or whatever, like.
Sometimes I check out. Sometimes I'm like, I can't deal. I'm not doing this shit today. And other times I'm like, yo, I have the energy. I have the capacity. I'm going to post more. I'm going to say shit more. I'm going to have more conversations. Like,
I think for me, like the difference between my clients and my friends is that like with my clients, I'm centering them. With my friends, I'm centering us. And like,
yeah.
And so it's like with my friends, I'm like, I
Well
love her so
put.
much.
Yeah.
I think what's better for
You guys
us.
are so emotionally intelligent.
And
It's
I
nice
think,
to hear.
thank you. I feel like it's like for us, like I think you should be involved, and I want to be able to have this conversation, and I love you even if you can't do it.
Yeah.
Like that's how I really feel, and so I think that's also because in friendships there's not a power dynamic in the same way. I can give somebody a suggestion and them say no to it without them feeling judged in the same way. And I think if I told my client to do something and they said no to it, it would be a big deal. It would be a big deal, not for me, but for them.